In 48 AD, the Empress of Rome made a bet with the city's most famous prostitute. A competition to see who could sleep with more men in one night. The prostitute was a professional, had been doing this for 20 years, knew every technique, had legendary stamina. The Empress was 26 years old, married to the Emperor, mother of 2 children, the most powerful woman in the Roman Empire. By dawn, the prostitute had quit, exhausted, defeated. The Empress? Still going. And according to the Roman historian who documented this, she wasn't even close to satisfied. Before you think this is some internet myth, let me show you the source. Pliny the Elder. Natural History, Book 10, Chapter 83. Written 77 AD. He states it as documented fact. Tacitus. Annals, Book 11. Written around 116 AD. He confirms the account and adds disturbing details. Juvenal. Satires, Satire 6. Written around 100 AD. He references it as something all Rome knew. 3 separate historians. Multiple primary sources. All describing the same woman. Her name was Valeria Messalina, Empress of Rome, wife of Emperor Claudius. And what she did, what these historians documented, was so extreme that for 2,000 years, people have argued over whether one human being could actually be that insatiable. But the sources don't lie. They're consistent, detailed, cross-referenced. This happened. And once you understand why it happened, once you see the pattern, it becomes the most disturbing story in Roman history. Let me show you. Let's start at the beginning. Because Messalina wasn't born a monster. She was created by a system that treated women like political chess pieces. Valeria Messalina is born around 17 to 20 AD into one of Rome's most prestigious families. Noble bloodline. Wealthy. Connected to multiple emperors through various family branches. By all accounts, she's beautiful. Tall. Auburn hair. The kind of looks that make men stop and stare. She's also smart. Educated. Speaks Greek. Studies philosophy. In another world, she might have been a scholar or artist. But this is Rome. And in Rome, beautiful aristocratic women have one job: marry well. Produce heirs. Secure alliances. In 39 AD, she's married to Claudius. He's 49 years old. She's somewhere between 14 and 19, sources vary, but she's young. Now, Claudius is not what you'd call desirable. He's got a limp. A speech impediment. Drools when excited. Twitches. His own family mocks him publicly. He's also a scholar, brilliant historian, actually, but Rome doesn't value that. They value military glory, political power, physical perfection. Claudius has none of those things. He's the family embarrassment. The one they keep around because he's too harmless to be a threat. So teenage Messalina is married to a man 30 years older who can barely walk straight. Not because anyone asked her. Not because she had a choice. Because her family needed the political connection. And then, in 41 AD, something nobody expected happens. Emperor Caligula is assassinated. Stabbed 30 times by his own guards. The Praetorian Guard searches the palace for the next emperor. They find Claudius hiding behind a curtain. Terrified. Convinced he's about to be killed too. Instead, they make him emperor. Why? Because he's the only adult male in the imperial family left alive. Because he's too stupid to be dangerous. Because they think they can control him. Overnight, the stammering, limping scholar becomes the most powerful man on earth. And his teenage wife? She becomes Empress of Rome. Most women would have been thrilled. Power. Wealth. Status. Everything a Roman aristocrat could want. But Messalina had already learned something about her husband. Something that would shape everything that came after. Claudius was older. Tired. His interest in the marital bed was limited. And Messalina was young. Beautiful. In her physical prime. With desires that her elderly, often ill husband couldn't or wouldn't satisfy. So she found satisfaction elsewhere. At first, Messalina is careful. Discreet. Takes lovers from among the palace staff. Guards. Servants. People who can't afford to talk. But being empress means having power that most Roman women never experience. And power is intoxicating. Think about what she can do now. She's not just some aristocratic wife. She's the empress. She can summon any man to the palace. She can give orders that nobody dares refuse. She can ruin anyone who speaks against her. And Claudius? He's busy running an empire, dealing with Senate politics, planning military campaigns, writing his histories. He's not paying attention to what his wife does at night. So Messalina gets bolder. She starts affairs with senators, with wealthy merchants, with famous actors. Actors were considered low-class in Rome, so this was especially scandalous. Tacitus records that she would disguise herself, leave the palace at night, and visit brothels in the Suburra, Rome's red light district. The Empress of Rome, sneaking out to brothels. Not for money, not for political intrigue, just for the thrill. Then she becomes obsessed with a man named Nestor, a famous pantomime actor, incredibly handsome, talented performer. Every woman in Rome wanted him. Messalina summons him to the palace, makes it clear what she wants. Nestor refuses. He's smart enough to know that sleeping with the emperor's wife is a death sentence, no matter how powerful she is, if Claudius finds out. So Messalina goes to Claudius, tells him she's fascinated by Nestor's art, asks if the emperor could order Nestor to give her private performances. Claudius, who loves theater and respects artists, signs an order commanding Nestor to obey the empress in all things. Nestor shows up at the palace with the emperor's written order. Messalina shows him the document, "Obey the empress in all things." He had no choice. The emperor himself had ordered him to comply. And that became her pattern. Use Claudius's authority to get what she wanted. Use her position to make refusal impossible. But even that wasn't enough. Because Messalina wasn't just collecting lovers. She was competing. Against other noble women. Against the city's courtesans. Against anyone who claimed to be more desirable, more skilled, more insatiable than the empress. And Rome was talking. Senators whispered. Citizens gossiped. Everyone knew what the empress was doing. But nobody could stop her. Because she was the empress. Because she had the emperor's ear. Because crossing her meant exile, execution, or worse. Until someone made the mistake of challenging her directly. The year is 48 AD. Messalina has been empress for 7 years. Her reputation is legendary, and not in a good way. Rome's most famous prostitute is a woman named Scylla. Professional courtesan. Expensive. Skilled. Has been in the business for 2 decades. And Scylla makes a mistake. At a party, after too much wine, she starts bragging. These noble women think they're so desirable. The empress thinks she's so special. But they've never done real work. They don't have the stamina. The skill. They couldn't last one night doing what I do. Wrong thing to say. Because someone reports it back to Messalina. And instead of having Scylla arrested or exiled, which would have been the normal empress response, Messalina does something nobody expects. She accepts the challenge. Publicly. She sends word to Scylla, "You say I couldn't do what you do? Prove it. One night. Same brothel. We'll see who satisfies more clients." The city loses its mind. The empress just challenged a prostitute to a sex competition? Senators are horrified. Claudius's advisors beg someone to tell the emperor. But nobody wants to be the one to explain to Claudius that his wife is planning to compete with a prostitute. Scylla, meanwhile, realizes she's in an impossible situation. If she refuses, she looks weak. If she accepts and loses, she's humiliated. If she accepts and wins, she's just defeated the empress, which might be even more dangerous. But she can't back down now. Her reputation is on the line. So on the appointed night, they both arrive at the brothel. Messalina supposedly using a blonde wig as disguise, though everyone knows who she is. And what happens next is documented by multiple historians. They don't go into explicit detail. Roman historians had standards, but they document the outcome. Pliny the Elder writes, "She challenged Rome's most notorious prostitute and conquered her." Tacitus records, "She exhausted a professional of 20 years' experience and emerged unsatisfied." Juvenal writes, "She outdid the girl who earned her living by her body." According to the sources, Scylla quit around dawn. Exhausted. Physically unable to continue. Messalina? Still going. And according to Pliny, and this is the line that's echoed through history, she left unsatisfied, but finally exhausted. She'd won. The Empress of Rome had competed with a professional prostitute. And she won. The story spread through Rome like wildfire. It made it into official histories. It became the defining story about Messalina for the next 2,000 years. But here's what nobody asks. Why? Why would an empress, the most powerful woman in the world, risk everything for this? Why compete with a prostitute? Why push her body to those extremes? Because this wasn't about sex. This was about something else entirely. Let me tell you what I think was really happening with Messalina. Because modern psychologists have studied her story, and there's a pattern here. She was married at somewhere between 14 and 19 years old, sources vary, to a man 30 years her senior. Not by choice. Because her family needed the political connection. She had no control over who she married. No control over her sexual life. No control over her body. Like every aristocratic woman in Rome, she was property. Then suddenly, she's empress. She has power. Real power. More power than any Roman woman is supposed to have. And she uses that power to reclaim the one thing she never had control over, her own sexuality. But because she never learned healthy boundaries, because nobody taught her that you can have sexual autonomy without destructive behavior, it spirals. She's not collecting lovers because she enjoys them. She's collecting them because each conquest proves she has control. Each affair is evidence that she's powerful, desirable, autonomous. It's not hypersexuality. It's a trauma response masked as sexuality. And the competition with Scylla? That's the clearest evidence. Think about it. Scylla made her living from her body. She was a slave to men's desires. She had no power, no choice, no autonomy. And Messalina, who'd spent her youth in the same position, just with better clothing, needed to prove she was different. That she had surpassed that powerlessness. So she competed. And won. And in doing so, proved to herself that she transcended the position every Roman woman was born into. But it didn't satisfy her. Because external validation never fills internal wounds. So she kept going. Kept pushing. Kept testing the boundaries of her power. Until she finally pushed too far. By late 48 AD, everyone in Rome knows about Messalina's behavior. Senators gossip. Citizens mock. Foreign ambassadors report back to their kingdoms about the scandalous Roman empress. But Claudius still doesn't know. His advisors are too terrified to tell him. His freedmen, the former slaves who actually run his administration, keep the information from him. Because telling the emperor his wife is sleeping with half of Rome? That's a good way to get killed for delivering bad news. Then Messalina does something even more reckless. She falls for a senator named Gaius Silius. Young, handsome, ambitious, and stupid enough to think he can rise through an affair with the empress. But Messalina doesn't just want an affair this time. She wants to marry him. While she's still married to the emperor. Now, Roman law doesn't allow divorce without the husband's consent. And obviously, Claudius isn't going to consent to his wife leaving him for a younger senator. So Messalina and Silius come up with a plan. An insane plan. A plan so stupid that when historians read about it, they wonder if these people had any survival instinct at all. They're going to have a wedding ceremony. Publicly. While Claudius is out of the city. Then they're going to claim that according to ancient Roman law that hasn't been used in centuries, this new marriage supersedes the old one. Essentially, they're planning to legally marry while she's still the emperor's wife, then argue that this makes Silius the new emperor. A coup. Through marriage law. While the current emperor is still alive. It's the stupidest conspiracy in Roman history. And they actually do it. October 48 AD. Claudius is in Ostia, Rome's port city, inspecting grain shipments. Messalina and Silius hold a full Roman wedding ceremony. Witnesses. Vows. Celebration. In public. And word reaches Claudius immediately. According to Tacitus, Claudius initially doesn't believe it. Thinks it's a cruel joke. His wife couldn't, have done this. Then his advisors show him the witnesses. The documentation. The proof. And something breaks in Claudius. The man who'd been cuckolded for years, who'd been mocked behind his back, who'd been oblivious to his wife's betrayals, finally understands the scope of it. He returns to Rome with the Praetorian Guard. Issues one order. Arrest everyone involved. No trials. No mercy. Silius is executed immediately. Beheaded in the forum. The wedding guests? Executed. All of them. Senators, nobles, anyone who attended. Messalina flees to her mother's estate. Sends desperate messages to Claudius. Begs for a chance to explain. Promises she'll give up everything, go into exile, just let her live. But Claudius doesn't respond. Instead, he sends the Praetorian Guard. They find her in her mother's gardens. Give her a choice, kill yourself, or we'll do it for you. Messalina can't do it. Stands there frozen, the knife in her hand, unable to end her own life. So a guard named WILDEST does it for her. One thrust. Through the heart. Valeria Messalina, Empress of Rome. Dead at 26 years old. Her body is left where it fell. No imperial funeral. No monument. Her name is erased from official records where possible. Claudius remarries within a year. To his niece, Agrippina. Who, ironically, will end up poisoning him 5 years later to put her son Nero on the throne. But that's another story. So what do we make of Messalina? For 2,000 years, she's been the punchline. The slut empress. The woman so insatiable she competed with prostitutes. Roman historians used her as a cautionary tale about women with too much power. Medieval writers used her as proof that women couldn't control their desires. Renaissance scholars used her as an example of moral corruption. But nobody asked, what made her that way? She was married as a teenager to an elderly man she didn't choose. She was treated as property, traded for political alliances. She had no agency, no autonomy, no control over her own body. Then she got power. And she used that power the only way she knew how, to reclaim what had been taken from her. Was she reckless? Yes. Destructive? Absolutely. Did she hurt innocent people? No question. But was she born that way? Or was she created by a system that gave women two choices, be property, or be destroyed? Because here's what's interesting. Rome had dozens of emperors who slept with whoever they wanted. Who had harems. Who violated their subjects. Who held orgies. And historians write about them as powerful, masculine, excessive perhaps, but understandable. But one empress does the same thing? She becomes the ultimate symbol of female depravity for 2 millennia. Maybe Messalina was a sex addict. Maybe she had psychological issues. Maybe she was genuinely insatiable. Or maybe she was a woman with power in a world that had never taught women how to have power responsibly. Because nobody taught her. Nobody showed her healthy boundaries. Nobody gave her models of female autonomy that didn't involve destruction. She just had rage, trauma, and unlimited authority. And she used all three until it killed her. That's not a morality tale about excessive female sexuality. That's a tragedy about what happens when you give someone power without ever teaching them how to be a person. There are more stories like this. Women who history judged harshly. Who were called monsters. Who we remember as cautionary tales. Cleopatra, political genius who ruled Egypt, allied with Rome's most powerful generals. Historical narrative, seductress who manipulated men with sex. Marie Antoinette, became scapegoat for French Revolution's causes. Historical narrative, obsessed with scandals about her alleged affairs and excesses. Anne Boleyn, executed by Henry VIII for political reasons. Historical narrative, accused of adultery, witchcraft, incest. But when you look closer, when you ask why, they became what they became. The answers are never simple. And they're never just about sex. If you want more hidden history, more stories they didn't teach you, you know what to do. Kindly subscribe and turn on your notification bell for more. See you in the next one.